Hi, everyone. Doc T here with another episode of the Horse Advocate podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. It is Memorial Day week. It was the fourth Monday of May, which here in America we celebrate. And I wanted to take a moment of silence, a moment to bow your heads, to think of all the people here in America who have died to keep us free and to bring us the ideals that we love so much here in America. I'm sure that every country that's listening to this must have something similar to it because people sacrifice for the life that we've got. And Memorial Day is one of those days that we just have to stop. And many of us enjoy it as a rite of spring. We have barbecues, or summer, I should say. We have barbecues. We have, beer. We have parties. It's just the beginning of summer here. But we can't stop thinking of why we have a Memorial Day. And it's because we give to the memory of these people who have committed the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have picnics with our party, with our family. So it's for me also a day where my original mentor, Dr. John Steiner from Mahopac, New York, who ended up out in Lexington, Kentucky, became very well known for his abilities for reproduction in horses. He retired and came back to New York and was helping a friend out, and he was with a stallion and nobody was around, so we don't have the true story, but apparently, not apparently, that stallion killed him. And it goes to the heart of the first law of my 10 irrefutable laws of horsemanship that says a horse can kill you. When you take a person who's worked with horses all of their life and he's working in the environment that he knows, but maybe because he got retired and he was just helping out that day, we'll never know. But he didn't make it. And he was my original mentor who encouraged me, who had belief in me and said that I could make it as an equine vet, and encouraged me to go back to school, finish my undergrad at Cornell, and move on to Cornell Vet School. So every Memorial Day, I pause and I think about this great man who mentored me. So this is actually, to be honest with you, not that I'm never not honest, but just to let you in on a fact, this is my third attempt to do this podcast. The other two were so dark, just morbid. I was talking about the veterinary crisis in the equine veterinary world that we're all seeing, and how important it is to have mentors, and that you've heard from me a million times. You've probably even experienced it yourself. It's hard to get a veterinarian out there. What triggered that was a veterinarian friend of mine came up to me last week and asked if I knew of anybody who would work as a veterinarian for him. He's a 4-person practice down to 2 people because the other 2 had quit. And he's a great guy. There's nothing wrong with him. He's got a great practice. The problem is it's on Long Island and the traffic is so thick and so hard to get to all these people. And it's just hard. Being an equine veterinarian these days is just really hard. So we commiserated a lot about that and how he's just going to be fading out, and that'll be the end of his practice. Maybe it'll be a personal takeover, but maybe not. So I wanted to instead just leave that and talk about a drug. It's not really a drug, it's a protein. And this is just fascinating. It's called Klotho. It's spelled Klotho, Klotho. And it's really Klotho, named after the daughter of Zeus in Greek mythology. And Klotho was coined with a letter K, named after the Japanese scientists who accidentally found this protein. Now, if you've been with me for any amount of time, you know that my belief is that we are all pretty much protein deficient. And proteins are made up of amino acids, and amino acids are like letters to words. And if you're missing one letter, you can't make a lot of words. More importantly, if we are not true to the syntax of our language, we can put the letters together incorrectly and we can have gibberish. So proteins have to be made very particularly. You can't have one amino acid out of place. It has to be perfect. And this protein, Klotho, is 1,000 amino acids long, which is a very large protein. And in fact, what makes this protein so unique is it starts inside the cell, and as it is pushed out, it goes through the cell wall and hangs out in the intercellular space. So there's a large set of this protein out there, then it's a portion that goes through the wall, and then there's a little tag on the inside. And once the protein is done being made, an enzyme comes along and clips it off at the cell wall, and the protein goes off in the bloodstream and acts like a hormone. And I'm going to get to what I think is important as far as horses go, because that's why you tune in. You want to know about horses. But I want to tell you what's happening in this research. So a young human has a lot of this protein hanging around. And as we get older, that diminishes. So as a youngster, they have 6 times more of this Klotho than I have as an adult, 50, 60 years old on up. And what 3 independent researchers found, doing 3 completely different aspects, they found that Klotho, if given to mice and primates, either as an injection sub-Q at the belly or in the arm, within 4 hours, their cognitive abilities dramatically increase. Their brain basically starts working better. And then that lasts approximately 19 days. One dose lasts 19 days, and it can remember where the car keys are, basically. It's just amazing. I know that's probably catching your attention because they're looking at this as an Alzheimer's drug or dementia drug or cognitive decline drug. And they haven't made the drug. They're now just thinking about getting human trials. So it's not coming out tomorrow, but they've had success in mice and a lot of success in certain lines of subhuman primates. So they also noticed that when they give this injection, mice live 30% longer. And not only live 30% longer, but that whole extra lifespan, they are superior in maze trials. And for the primates, they would have cups, and they would put a treat that the primate loves, and they would put it in one of 3 cups or one of 9 cups in a pattern of 3 by 3. And it would be behind a window, and it'd only be one treat in 1 cup, and then they'd close the blind. And then at some point later, they'd open the blind and allow access. And he not only had the primate not only had to remember that there was a treat there, but to locate it correctly first time, that it was in the 2nd cup or the 3rd cup or wherever. And their ability to do that and many other tests just skyrocketed all within 4 hours of having this injection. So they tried to figure out what causes this. And it turns out that independently, they found out that there is something called platelets, which we all know about. Platelets are used for clotting. Well, if you don't have platelets, you become a hemophiliac and blood just keeps pouring out, you don't clot. Well, it turns out that platelets have a bunch of factors, little granules on them, that do multiple things. And in certain conditions, they will create the clot. But when it comes into contact with this protein, Klotho, it releases platelet factor 4. And that's what stimulates the neurons to become more active. So they're looking at a bunch of neurodegenerative diseases, and they're seeing how this actually works for them. And what was interesting is through genetic engineering of mice, they were able to find mice with APO4 gene, which basically is a genetic determinant of whether humans are going to have Alzheimer's or not. And they were able to get these mice to have the proteins, the tau and the amyloid that is stuck in the brain that they said makes the brain not work and is indicative of Alzheimer's. And they would become demented. But they also made a strain of mice that had a special tweak in their protein synthesis that created what they called a Dookie Howser mouse, which means that the mouse became brilliant by having them make Klotho proteins that was enhanced. And these enhanced mice lived longer and were extremely good at getting out of situations, tests that required brain and location. So then when they took the mouse that developed the amyloid and the tau protein in the brain and had this Klotho expression together, they showed no signs of dementia, yet they still had the amyloid plaques and the tau plaques in the brain, all the signs of dementia, and yet they weren't suffering from it. So hang on to your hats, boys and girls. If you have some cognitive decline in your parents, your grandparents, or even in yourself, there are a lot of research out there, researchers doing these studies, and they found conclusive, reproducible studies that are showing that this one protein is helping a lot of people. And they also realize that there's a genetic factor. But they also realize that if you want to increase your Klotho, better than a genetic chink in some people's armors that make their Klotho have more, it's exercise. And exercise, especially good exercise over 3 to 4 weeks' time, you'll increase your Klotho protein by about 30%. Also decreasing stress. And I thought that was fascinating, because nobody wants to exercise. It's just too much work. But now we're realizing that if you want longevity and you want a health span, these things are important. And the podcast kind of ended on a really incredibly positive note where there's a researcher, and I forgot exactly where this person is, so this group is, but they're looking at all-cause mortality. And all-cause mortality just means what are people dying from, or what are primates dying from, or what are mice dying from? And you have atherosclerosis, you have kidney failure, you have dementia, non-physical. In other words, we're not including car wrecks, but all the health diseases. And the rate of all-cause mortality was reduced when they could increase the amount of Klotho protein. And that's just striking because it goes back to diet and exercise. And now they're seeing not only proof, but they're actually identifying what it is. They don't know how it works, actually. They do know that it will protect the synapse, which is the connections in the brain. It will protect them. As she said, it's like putting a little helmet on there so that you can have all these other things going on, and yet the synapses are preserved. So if I wanted to tie this all together and talk about horses, they are finding this protein and the genetic expression of this protein in all sorts of animals. They called it preserving. And when something like this is preserved across species, then we know that it is very important. It is required for having a good, long, healthy life. And so it's found in many animals. So I'm going to assume that it's in our horses. No one's going to put the money up to do this. I can assume all I want. It's just we're having fun here. We're just guessing. But humans are being killed at a higher and higher and higher rate from all causes of disease, including dementia. And dementia it used to be in just certain countries, but now they're realizing that it's increasing in almost every country they see. So it's getting worse. And the only thing that I can come up with that makes sense to me is that the diets of most humans on the planet have changed. We know that we also have blue light, we have electromagnetic radiation. Thanks, Elon, we now have Wi-Fi coming down from the sky. We have tons of things, and it's all arguable. I get it. But we didn't see much cancer prior to 1750. And after 1750, when sugar was being manufactured in our southern areas, the Caribbean, Mexico, and southern United States, and all that sugar was being shipped over to England and cancer rates went up, it was pretty obvious that increasing sugar did that. So in 1973, when I started with horses, we didn't have all these diseases. And yet now we have more diseases than we know what to do with in our horses. They're not thriving anymore. And my theory is it's because they're being fed all these extra grains. I just looked at a very prominent grain that comes from Europe, and it's supposed to be super for free fecal water in a horse. I said, let's read the ingredients list. And it was alfalfa. That was the first ingredient. Then it had oat hulls, rice hulls, soybean hulls, then soybean oil, then flaxseed hulls, and flaxseed, and then molasses, and then monocalcium phosphate, and then calcium carbonate. And I'm like, this is just garbage you're feeding your horse. And you're not looking at the primary cause. So our horses are hurting. And my job here is to listen to all the things that are going on in human research, because that's where the money is, and interpret and, guess. And whether guessing is right or not, I don't know. But nobody else is coming up with anything on horses, and we have to do something about it. So Klotho, pretty interesting protein. And of course, proteins are amino acids. I've been complaining since the beginning of time that our horses are chronically protein deficient and chronically high quality protein deficient. So they're missing several amino acids. They're missing the leucine that creates the muscle, as I explained in the last podcast, the signaling compound that allows muscles to grow. You have all the other amino acids. Without leucine, the muscle won't grow. You can have protein that doesn't have a lot of proline and glycine, which is important for connective tissue. So you have tendons and ligaments that fall apart. You have teeth that fall apart. You have skin and fall apart. They can't protect themselves. You've got to get the wide variety of amino acids, and you can either get them man-made in a container, or you can have it made by nature, so we know that it's got all these amino acids, and start feeding enough of them. So I think I've said enough. It's a pretty interesting protein. It has 1,000 amino acids. That's a lot of amino acids. And you need to be feeding high quality protein, a minimum of 0.5 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And if you're not doing that, if you're a 1,200 pound horse and you're getting only 600 grams of good quality, or 450, 500 grams, it's not enough. And they're going to start to fail on you slowly over time, but they'll fail on you. I just had a client tell me her horse was diagnosed with MFM, and that's a new disease for me. It's myofibrillar myositis, which is similar to equine storage myopathy, EPSM, polysaccharide storage myopathy. And she's all excited because she found that there's a supplement that was MFM pellets. And I said, well, let me look at the ingredients. And I was kind of shocked, but not surprised, that it is mostly amino acids. So here's a horse that is having a protein synthesis problem, and they're suggesting that it's a defect in the ability to make a protein. And it might be, I don't know. But why is adding amino acids helping the horse if they can't make the protein? And the horse doesn't get it until minimum 6 years of age. And I've been telling you, around 6 years of age, things start to happen. By 12, that's when everything falls apart. And here's a horse that was 10 falling apart. And she's adding amino acids, but she refuses to feed soybean meal. She says, I will not feed soy ever. And I said, why? She says, because it's inflammatory. And I'm like, gosh, it's not. But it was her belief system. You can't get around people's belief systems. They will feed amino acids anyway. So it's a long road for me. I'm glad you're listening, and I appreciate you being here listening to everything I have to say, especially on the first weekend of summer here in America, in the Northern Hemisphere, Memorial Day, where we mourn the loss of those who sacrificed their lives since the 1860s to today to give us our democracy, our freedom. And we need to remember those people and think about all the future that's out there and what we're going to do. But sometimes the past gives us the answers. All right, that's it for me. This is an eclectic group of information, and I hope I haven't bored you. Maybe you're going to contact me and say, hey, tell me that stuff for my mom and dad who are losing their ability to remember things. It's pretty scary, but I will tell you, stop feeding sugar, start eating lots of protein, as much as you can get in. Try to avoid vegetable proteins because humans aren't supposed to have them. If you're a horse, don't feed meat to the horse, feed vegetable proteins to your horse, and exercise. And that exercise is going to increase the production of Klotho, which leads to longevity and preserving the synapses in the brain. And that's my message to you. Diet and exercise. It's been proven again. All right. Thanks, folks. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye. Hey, everyone. Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review? However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There's two reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me.
And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.